Wow.
I'm sure my junks.
Wow. So I'm glad to be here today with you, Professor Small, Mr. Kemi Akimbo. It's a pleasure. Akinbi. Sorry, sir. Sorry. The fact is that they say that they can only control you if you're ignorant. And there's a lot that the youth on our continent, especially, we need to find out. And we can only find out from those who are custodian of the knowledge that is out there. This is not superficial knowledge on TV. This is not sports. This is not entertainment. This is something that brings freedom and liberty. Yesterday, I took Uber. I was going to do something. And this Ghanaian young man, he said that he stays in Dubai. And we were chatting with him. And he seemed not to see anything positive in Ghana. He came here because he came here and got locked down because of the COVID. And so we were talking, and you could see the energy. And even though he's trying to do something here, he still was focused on all negative. So I told him what he was saying. Maybe it's true, but there are a lot that he also does not know. And that's why I want you to share with us with your Rawlings in mind. I grew up in Ghana.
Yes. You know, and Ghana has always been special to the African American community because Kwame Nkrumah lived in Harlem. He lived among us. He met our Malcolm X. He was a friend with our great teacher, Dr. John Henry Clarke. He went to Lincoln University. And when Nkrumah went back home, he brought many African Americans to Ghana to assist in the building of the new republic, along with many Ghanaian expatriates who came back home. And even those from Nigeria and other places came. A lot of people don't know. People came from around Africa to become a part of that movement of being free of colonialism led by Nkrumah and the Big Six. We can't leave them out. Even though they had their own disagreements, they started that process together. And there's no way to go through revolutionary change without conflicts and contradictions because beliefs are different and dreams are different. Sometimes they lead to catastrophic things that's injurious. And then we have a tendency to remember the injuries more than we remember the successes that are important to building a nation. And so Africa has always been, or Ghana has always been bound in that way to African Americans. We think of Maya Angelou in Ghana. We think of Dr. Robert Lee in Ghana. We think of W.B. Du Bois in Ghana. We think of Malcolm X in Ghana. We remembered when Nkrumah got inaugurated, Adam Clay Powell was there in Ghana. Ralph Bunche was in Ghana. Dr. Martin Luther King was in Ghana, and others. And history, sometimes because we rely on our enemies recording our history, we don't record these things. And it's important to know these things to understand the root of the relationship. Notwithstanding, many of us in North America, we come primarily from three places: Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Ghana. Those are the three groups that make up the majority of the African American blood and gene pool. And so I was very lucky. My first trip to Ghana was in 1982. Thanks to Nana Sapang and Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Nana Sapang, the Agogo Hene. I was actually installed in Agogo in 1984. So Ghana was always a place close to me. I got to know and got very close, thanks to Dr. Jeffries and Bafo Okotu, who's linguist for Santahini, Atumfo Pokawari. I got very close to Santahini. He was like an uncle to me, you know. Bafo, who beat me up when he first met me, became like a father and a teacher to me. I studied with people from the Arikana Shrine with Nana Parabia. Just trying to get people some background so they can know I'm not a Johnny-come-lately, to Ghana. I studied at the Arikana Shrine, and I studied under Nana Fuasa, who is the chief priestess of Ashanti. So I'm not new to Ghana culture, Ghana politics. In the mid-'80s, I met a young man, Aruko Mofa. I met a Mofa who became the deputy minister of tourism under President Rawlings. And so I got very involved in the government in many ways. I can't say because the American would then charge me with being an agent of another government, But I remember there was one occasion, long before the year of return, somewhere in the 90s, Jerry sent us to America to do a 16-city tour. And with members of the tourism sector, the culture sector, and we covered 16 American cities in 15 days, holding 2 meetings in each city, one with the investment, business groupings, and one with the general public to promote tourism. And it was very successful. And we saw in 92 the birth of Panafest. And I'm with my group and Dr. Jeffries in 1991, we did the first walkthrough of Panafest with 80 African Americans all around Ghana. And President Rawlings gave us an escort. He didn't give it personally, of course. He sent an escort to take us around the country. And he also sent a letter to all of the chiefs and the mayors and all the towns in the village so that we would be welcome with a proclamation from the president. So that was really my first encounter with the president.
Wow.
And in 1992, one of the things I had come to Ghana, and I'd gone, Dr. Jeffries and Nana Sapang that took me to Santa Hene, Atumfo Pokawari, because I had a dream. In the dream, it said it would not allow us, the ancestors said they would not allow us to return home to Africa unless Ghana built a shrine for the return of the ancestors. And so Santa Hene had a big meeting with all of his chiefs and had me address them with the dream. They did the same thing in the regional house in Central Region, and Gamanche at the time, Niamugi, did the same thing with the house in Accra. And so this is me coming into Ghana in ways most people don't come into Ghana or Africa. And so in 92, that was 91. In 92, they held the big spiritual celebration at Elmina Castle Dungeon. And Elmina Castle Dungeon was consecrated as the shrine to those who were lost in the Middle Passage and in the enslavement in Diaspora. And the blood of the goats and the lamb was sprinkled all around by the chiefs. And that day, they had a big durbar in the castle, but we didn't know. So as we were coming, I decided that the night before that we should all wear white, but it was too late to make bubas. So we got somebody to make us ponchos, white ponchos. And there was enough for everybody except one person. So I gave mine to the young man, and I put on a red, black, and green robe that was given to me by one of my students from Liberia. And to me, the most dramatic thing in my life is to have this red, black, and green robe leading this white ribbon into the Elmina dungeon while somebody started singing in the crowd the Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And when we were crossing the bridge, the guns started going, because we didn't know there were people. There was 1,000 more people inside. We didn't know there was a big durbar. And so they came and grabbed Dr. Jeffries and started tossing him in the air. And he's screaming, no, you got the wrong man. Get small, get small. And they said, no, we got you. So they installed him as a divisional chief of a particularly a Sapo company there. And all of the gods of the Fantis came that day. All of their major gods came that day. It was an extraordinary day. And I just want people to know the shrine, the Elmina dungeon, is the shrine consecrated to those lost in the diaspora. This is all done and official. This is before Bihankra. Bihankra should have never happened, actually. This was done. And the House of Chiefs from across the country sanctioned it. And the priests and priestesses performed the rituals. It was done. And so when I got in, those days I had long locks, or y'all call dreadlocks. I don't use that word dread. I had sacred locks. So the priest came over to Dr. Jeffrey and said, well, we can't touch him because he's a priest. And at that time, I had just resigned as an imam. I'd been an imam and a hajj, been to Mecca. Most people don't know when Malcolm X was assassinated at 21 years old, I'm the man that took over the mosque as imam. So they can see some foundation of who I am, where I come from. The president had actually arranged for me to be in stool. So that's why Dr. Jeffries was protesting, saying you have the wrong man. But the priests had decided we can't touch him that way because he's already a priest. So that is my foundation with the president. A few years later, I would give him the Malcolm X Award, which we give every 10 years to an African president. The first one went to Idi Amin Dada of Uganda, who's also one of my great heroes, contrary to what the white world would want us to think about him. I knew him better than that. And so at the National Theater, I'm on the stage sitting beside the president, and this may have been his last term, and his last year in his last term. And he turns to me and he says, Small, how come we never met physically? I know of you, I hear of you, but never met you. I said, well, your men, they kind of keep, they protect you, they keep me away. He says, oh, I'll fix that. I didn't know what that means because he's the president of a nation. I'm a little man with an award I'm trying to give him. That night, about 8 o'clock, I'm walking back up to my hotel, which was the Sana Lodge in Tisano. And the staff is running down the driveway. Come, the president is here, the president is here. I said, what president? President Rawlings is here, he's looking for you. And so here I am, some little man from America, and the president of the nation have come to my hotel to greet me. No greater honor could a man ever hold in his heart. And so from that moment on, I had this great admiration. I'd watched the work. And let me not let people think I'm just nostalgic and foolish. I understand what happened in 79. I understand what happened in 81. I understand the death and the people we lost in that coup d'etat, the 3 presidents, the judges, and others. It is almost impossible to go to military coups or revolutionary action without losing lives, and sometimes losing lives we don't want to lose. And I know the president and I spoke about this a few times, and I know in his heart, his regret for some of those things that occurred. But we also know that he brought Ghana back to the multi-party democracy. No military leader in the history of the world had ever pulled a coup, took control, and then create a multi-party democracy, run for office, and respect time limits and step down and step away.
Wow. Professor, okay. Thank you very much. I want to hear from the man you said that he should be here. And he said, he showed me a lot of books. He said some of them, you have to be initiated before you read them. So, yes, sir. Femi Akimbo, Mr. Femi Akimbo. Please tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon. I hope all is well with all of us. It's a chance to me to comment, but unfortunately on this side, I couldn't hear you properly. There was statics, so I didn't hear Professor Jeffrey properly, and I didn't hear you properly, but I hope that it's clear now enough where you all could hear me. Is it clear on your end?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, I like to greet all the people of Ghana, modern day Ghana, because we're all of the same people. And encourage the Ghanaians that we didn't lose our President Rawlings, that he's still with us in spirit, and that the essence of when we say somebody dies, that is somebody who does not live in spirit. If you live, you never die, because your hope and aspiration is transferred to the youth after you, or to the people after you, to continue spirituality. That's your humanness. So to die then is not dead, it's still with us. The question becomes, what do we do with his legacy? And how do we move it forward from where he left it? It takes a lot of courage for any of us to, when most of us are asleep completely. The whole continent of Africa, mass population, are the fault of our history. So we do not know who our friends are and who our enemies are anymore. And if we do not have enemies at all, we have frenemies, friends and enemies one. And we do not know how or where to. If you do not know where you are coming from, you have no idea where to go. Our issue with the Europeans and the foreigners in the continent has cost us so drastically, and it's still costing us. And I'm not sure most of us could fathom the depth of the destruction they've done to us in our human psyche, culturally, economically, and politically. If we are inform the youth and the mass of the population, the depth of the price we have paid, still continually paying with our intervention, our interaction with this, and how our elders, they did the best they can, but a lot of holes are unplugged. So what we have to now figure out how to do with the passing of people like Rawlings is to now do a system analysis of our historical GPS global positioning system. Where were we before this book came to us? What are the issues were we having? What was our standard of livelihood? What was our state of happiness and coexistence before they came? And what happens since we met them? And what are the results we are dealing with because of our interaction with them? And what position are we now? And where do we need to go from here? Those fundamental issues I should ask ourselves. The bottom line issue is the bread and butter issue. It's an economical issue. Somebody think that if you plead to the Europeans or the Eurasians, that our problem will go away. I'm so sorry. There's a purpose why it is called a race. A race is a jogging or a running between people. If you stop running, they're running in front of you. If you are stagnated, they're running in front of you. Most races the same end, where it's a draw. Somebody's trying to win at all costs. And if you are running a race and you have a high-level competitor, you hope he or she fail, that you could just win with that effort. That's what we are into. And I don't think we, as a group of people, have got to the position where we realize that we're at war, but we don't see the war. I see Africans as a group of people dancing where a volcano or a tornado is upon us, and we're dancing. Those of us who are interested, trying to sound the warning bell to say, look, it's time for us to reorganize, to restructure ourselves, so we can have a fit on the human family table, because our table has been stolen a long time ago. The bottom line issue is the mental state of the African continent. Why are we at the state where we are in? there is a brother that wrote a book called Chains and Images of Slavery. His name is Professor or Dr. Akbar. So that we could know what is happening to our mental state. Why is it that everywhere, all over the continent right now, there's no coexistence among us anymore, whereas we seem to not be able to agree within ourselves? Why is it that the ruling elite of the African continent see fit to take everything at the expense of the masses and leave the masses in the state of suffritude? The question then becomes, how are we going to address this? That was what President Rawlings was able to do in Ghana, is by coming in, look at how dirty and filthy the system is or was then, and clean it. In the European setting, collateral damage. You cannot have those things without having to lose some of us. And you cannot have those kind of effort without losing some innocent bystander who have nothing to do with it. But at the end of the day, do we get what we need to get? A clean slate, so that Ghanaians now run for political office, realize that you can't steal the people's money. If you might be a running that come down you out. The fear of God is now bestowed upon them because of the effect of the rollings of our life. Those are the things that he left us. Somebody was asking it yesterday, that what are the effect of what he left with us? What are the tangibles he left for us? And I was laughing because Professor Small addressed the person. I just decided to be quiet, because if you look at the effect of what other people have done to us, what have they left us? Is sorrow, tears, and pain. That's their trademark, and it will always be the trademark. The pinch that we took from Ghana to reset the table is minute to the effect of what the Europeans have done to the African continent. So I guess my take would be, where does the African continent reassemble ourselves mentally, and where do we go from here? It is important, though, that part of what we now have to do is to how do we re-educate the youth. We are miseducated globally. The education system, most of the youth of the African continent are getting a miseducation system. They have a system for a local development. The education system we're inheriting does not fit the definition of a right education. The word education comes from the word educe. That means to use your knowledge in your environment, to use it to enhance yourself first and enhance the rest of the environment where you come from. That is not what we are doing in the African continent. We're taking a foreign educational system and try to force it into our culture. The educational system was meant for us. It was meant to put us in a certain level of docility, of servitude, where other people will be able to rule us.
Right.
There was a book that if you are listening, that they may want to look at. It's called The Miseducation of the Negro by Woodson. They should take a look at that book. It might help us to look at some of these issues. I'm not sure what area you want me to flash the light on. But
okay,
if you
so
have a question,
yes. So I'll be asking questions. Professor, I know your stance on President Rawlings. But growing up in Ghana, or if I look around, if I'm of, let's say he represents or represented PNDC, NDC. Now, a typical Ghanaian who is on that side in terms of politics will say that he was a great man easily. Now, if they are on the other side, let's say MPP, now they will tell you all the atrocities, all the negatives. But anytime I traveled somewhere, I saw how other Africans respected him and loved him. I saw that. But then you bring it home, you will see that if I'm of NDC group, I respect him. But if I'm of the other side, I say I will tell you all the bad things that he did, and he didn't have to do the second coup, and that Liman could have continued on, and Ghana would have been better without him coming to do the second coup. Most people would agree with the first one, but the second one, most people will have. That's those who have even read or studied this. Where is your position on that? And the same thing is even on Dr. Nkrumah as well. The people who are with him, if you bring him out of the continent, he's seen and respected hugely. If you bring him to the local politics, a lot of our people will tell you all the negatives and the things that he will do. I would want to know your positions on these.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, and I've heard the president said that some of the executions in his heart was regrettable. But what other path we can go? I've studied President Lehman. What our people don't understand is a document that Kwame Nkrumah left us. Is called neo-colonialism. Neo-colonialism is his last great book. Every Ghanaian should read that book. It will describe the Americans and the British and their corporate structure and MI6, the British intelligence network, and the American CIA intelligence network hold on the government of Ghana after the overthrow of Nkrumah. Because it was America's CIA that orchestrated that along with Ghanaians. It wasn't just the Americans. It was your general. It was your chief of police. They, sometimes I laugh because I said the chief of police only motivation, he was feared he was going to get fired when the president get back. But I know it was deeper than that. The CIA orchestrated a coup. The British supported that coup and helped it to be orchestrated. And they were trying to fashion the neo-colonial government that Lehman and all the others were in, who, and let's be clear, many of the great names we know, and I'm not going to call them because sometimes we got to let the past go to sleep, were in the pockets of the CIA, in the pockets of British intelligence, in the overthrow of Nkrumah. They had no clear understanding of the colonialism and neocolonialism and its economic hold on Africa and Ghana particularly because of the cocoa and the gold. And we never talk about the diamonds in Ghana that's so secretly handled, okay? And along with the bauxite, the manganese, we can go on. These people was who got overthrown. Rawlings overthrew the CIA. Rawlings overthrew MI6. Rawlings overthrew British and American colonialism. And Rawlings didn't do it by himself. This was a military coup that he didn't even formulate. They pulled him into the leadership of it. So we talk about one man. One man don't run no coup. One man don't run a nation. There's thousands of other people around him, hundreds at least, that's in the leadership of the military that took over Ghana. So let's be fair. And they came from all quarters in Ghana, these military men. And they weren't acting as juveniles. Yes, there were some young people that got carried away and there were some killings that shouldn't have happened. And some of the things he got blamed for, he wasn't even there. But like he told me once, he said, I was the leader, so I had to take the fall. I took the blame. I was the leader, so I have to carry that burden. And that's true. That's the burden the leader carries. There were bad things that happened from 1979 forward that was injurious because Ghana is a very tightly knitted ethnic nation. When you belong to the Ga community or the Ada or the Akwapim or the Akwamu or the Ashanti or the Ewe, you're very tightly knit. So when anyone from your sector, ethnic sector, is killed, it stays in your soul. and there is no justice to it in your heart, and I understand that. But we have to look at history, and we have to look at why people act politically in history and some of the consequences that comes with those actions. And when we study history appropriately, we will learn in our hearts to forgive the mistakes of those whose efforts was to save us from the slavery that colonialism, because colonialism was as much slavery as the chattel slavery that my grandparents lived through. Maybe worse, because it was such an extraordinary slavery of the mind. They came to crush our culture, to break our spirit, in order to steal our raw materials. That's the bottom line here. And
what's different? Sorry.
And the way I'm talking about the British, Canadian, and American corporate structure that was guarded by the British, Canadian, and American intelligence networks working on the ground in Ghana to make sure those corporations could steal our natural resources, and that Ghanaians would be nothing more than peripheral players at the foot of the table of the white man. This is what they were going up against. They weren't foolish little children reacting out of emotions. They were trying to plot a way out of colonial dominance so that Ghana, and they weren't just talking about Ghana. There was a relationship between Namibia and Ghana, a relationship between Burkina Faso and Ghana, a relationship between Zimbabwe and Ghana, a relationship between Mozambique and Ghana. They were really moving to carry out a continental-wide revolution, but unfortunately, they didn't get there. But that's what Ghana was only a part of an attempt to take control of the continent away from the exploiters in Europe and Asia and the Arab world. Had we been successful, we wouldn't have a Boko Haram now. We wouldn't have what's going on in Mali or Somalia now. But we weren't successful. Ghana was one of the most successful models. Look at yourself. Look at all of the rest of the 49 other nations. And thank God for the position you hold. And Rawlings didn't play just a little role in that. Did they make mistakes? Yes, they made mistakes. But did they bring us some success and put Ghana in a place that other nations envy? Yes, they played a role in doing that. So let's give them their due. Give them their criticism, but give them their due. You know, I'm abroad. I've been at conferences with the president after he left office in Bermuda, in the Bahamas, and I watched how he represented Ghana with dignity and integrity, you know, and he took the blame in the public for the mistakes. I've seen him do it over and over again, you know. He was a terrible speech. He was a good speech writer, but a terrible speech giver. You know, Mr. President would start out giving a nice speech, but after the first 5 minutes, he went off someplace else. And the whole speech never got read. So when I criticized that when we were in Bermuda. So the next conference, the next year, we were in the Bahamas. And I forgot the name of the organization we were all speaking for. And so I'm sitting in the restaurant, and here comes the president with his yellow pad and a handful of pencils. He said, okay, you criticize my speech, you write the speech. So I said, I'm not a good speech writer. I said, but you're a wonderful speech writer, but I can show you how to give the speech. Because I had a formula called my red, black, and green dots I did with pen. You know, one tell me when to start. When I get to the next dot, I know I would bear away and do my own mind. But I look at my paper, no, it's time to come back to my paper again. And he gave a speech in the Bahamas that day that was standing ovation. I take a little bit of credit for that. But it's a wonderful, powerful speech. And he was talking, Femi, about economic, politics, and culture, you know, and our need for controlling that. So, yes, we have lost a great brother, a great father, a great son. Yes, in the course of history of trying to right the ship of a nation, him and the comrades that moved with him made some mistakes and commit some errors that cause pain till today because of the lives that was lost. But that's only a part of the legacy.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Okay. So, Mr. Femi, what is it that you want the African youth to know? What is it? You showed me a lot of books. What is it that you you showed me? And I'm sure that if you see our in quote, our ignorance, our innocence as African young man or woman, what is it that you think that we are missing in terms of knowledge, in terms of the things that are not so superficial?
The case of the African continent is that our brain has been stolen.
Okay.
Slavery is more mental than it is physical.
All right.
It is important to incarcerate us mentally than physical. You could take the chain off, but the mental is the hardest part of it. And part of what they've done is they've controlled the narratives of our history, from culture to economics to politics. They are ingrained in us. So also we're operating out of the void of our history. Those who not their history are bound to repeat the same mistake. Your history is your GPS. It's your global position system. It allows you to see where you are coming from, and it allows you to see where you are going. We do not have that. My biggest experience as a consultant when I traveled through the African continent is that I'm realizing that in almost all the African continent, we are devoid of all our historical write-ups from us, by us, for our own progression. That's why I collect all these books to try and share it with the people who are interested in the subject matter. Steve Biko of South Africa said this. He said the greatest weapon the oppressor have over the oppressed is the mind.
It's the mind.
He also said the greatest weapon the oppressed have to liberate himself with is also the mind. So we are at a war, at the battle of the mind, and the Europeans currently are winning that war. We need to change these narratives. We need to start to read what happened to us in the past. Mm-hmm. How did our ancestors lose to them? What could we do now to reassemble ourselves? And where do we go from here? I could share some of my literatures with you, a little, some of them. One of them say, know thyself. That's where you should start from. This is written by Akbar. Mm-hmm. And that will be an introduction. That means that there are other books that cover that subject. Why? If you don't know who you are, anybody could tell you what they want you to be. So it's important to start from who we are first, and then start to learn what do we inherit, the good in it, the bad in it, and the ugly in it. And then able to do a system analysis of what it is in it that is still useful to us, and then to forward. The best state of the African continent is a sleeping state. All of us are sleeping. And there's no driver at the wheel. So we could be turned any way you could think. If you look at the current state of how we are operating, we'll be sick mentally, without doubt. And we belong to the mental hospital. Almost all of us.
What are the things that you see? How do you identify a mind that is sick, a mind that is enslaved? How do you identify that? What are the things that you see that will make you say that this one Sleep. This one is sick. This one is.
When you get through, let me bring Jerry in. That.
Okay.
How could we as a people sit on the #1 real estate on the planet? And that's the base of economics is land. And we're the poorest. How could we sit at the center of the universe, planet Earth, highest, best aggregated land on the planet, and still suffer for food and famine? How could we educate it when we are giving all our contracts to development to foreigners? How could you have a graduate that is out of school for 8 years with no job, and you're giving your contracts to Chinese? How could you sit and a group of people bring a fake paper called money that is no longer backed by gold? The standard was changed in the 60s from what is called a gold standard to flat currency. The flat currency is a piece of paper, only back with political will.
So are the people? Country. Okay, so this one seems like is the people in big positions that you're describing. How about? I mean, I'm a street boy. I'm on the road. These are decisions made from the top. So if they have mental issues, does that affect me, or am I also in the same situation?
Yes. Let me respond, Femi, and then you can come back in.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it affects you.
So the question
it affects you.
Let me get the question from you.
Yes, it affects you because when you get ready to call for God, you call for your murderer's God and not your grandmother's God. When you get ready to call to be saved, you turn to the religions of your rapist and exploiter, not your grandmother's savior. No country in the world have been forced to abandon its culture except Africa. They talk about India and the Hindus. They had their celebration of light yesterday. The whole world carried it. It's all right for the Indian to be Hindu. It's already all right for the Japanese to be Shinto. It's all right for the Chinese to be Confucian. But we got to be the murderers' spiritual system, the exploiters, the rapers. I know you kind of get a little afraid when I touch on Christianity, but I want you to understand, I'm talking about that brand that was given to us by our rapists and our murderers. You cannot be sane if you reject the legacy of your mothers and fathers and accept as your identity and your motivation the legacy of their rapists and murderers. That's insanity. Whether it's your fault that you're there or not is not the question. The question is the behavior. The question is, I could kill one of my own dime. We do it in Black America every day. In the last 30 years, Black Americans have killed over 300,000 other Black Americans because we're insane. Because we don't know our history. We don't know our culture. We don't know our gods. Well, if the other God is so dang on good, why are we in our crisis? We pray harder than anybody else in the world. We pray through our drums, through our dance, through our music. Whoa, either God ain't listening. If me and my enemy is worshiping the same God and the enemy is doing good, wouldn't it tell me that the God is listening to him and not me? Let me find some God that's going to listen to me. And I raise religion because that's where we are most insane.
Okay.
You see? Now, I'm not finished. I want to say the question of economic politics and culture. Femi laid it out very nicely. How can we have our children graduating from college with no job? And we have Chinese lay people and workers in our nation taking our jobs. How could we think, what's sanity? That's not just the people from the top. The people at the bottom have to raise his voice. And that's what I remember when Rawlings said one time, somebody asked him what he thought of himself. He says, I'm just an ordinary, hungry, screaming Ghanaian. That something is awfully wrong. And when he got into power and people were praising him, he said, please don't sing songs of praise for me. Sing those songs for Ghana, Africa, and the Black man. And so I point like, Femi, if you want to see a description of the condition we are under, get this book, Kwame Nkrumah, your founding president, The Last Stage of Imperialism, Neo-Colonialism. It should be a must-read for every Ghanaian. And those who could not read, someone should read it to them. Then you need to get this book. It's called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa by Cheikh Anta Diop out of Senegal. They just built a big statue for him there. He has another good book. I got one more after this one. This one is called Civilization or Barbarism by Cheikh Anta Diop. These should be the reading lists if we want to get rid of this. Right now, we've traded the American and British imperialists for the Chinese imperialists. And we are rationalizing it by saying, oh, they're building roads, they're building schools. Yes, and you've given them your raw material that belongs to your great-great-grandchild for perpetuity or for 100 years, so that your grandchild would have nothing as an inheritance because you've given it away to these people. Me and you know how to build roads. If we don't have bulldozers, let's use wheelbarrows and shovels. Why can't we build a road? Sankara was calling for that behavior in Burkina Faso when the French and the Americans assassinated him and the British. So we have to wake up to reality. Now let me show you one more book by one of your great teachers. This is called African Culture and Governance and Development by Nana Kwabena Nketia V. Amenheni Avesukado. It's a big book, but we should all read it because he really gets to the core of what's going on in Ghana. And then my last book, so my Christian brothers and sisters won't think I'm just some evil old man. This one is by our brother, Nanambansi Dakwa, PhD, since y'all like PhDs, he got a PhD. The title, The Africans Who Wrote the Bible. Read it again. The Africans Who Wrote the Bible. His footnotes is impeccable. So we need to study. We need to know our history. As the brother Femi showed one of the books by, I think that's Dr. Akbar, Know Thyself. The other one he put up, Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. If you don't like that word, let's say The Miseducation of the Ghanaian. Read the book. It will show you what's wrong with your mind. And so when we come to celebrate this man who one day will have an, of course he died, in his family, Jerry John Rawlings, President Jerry John Rawlings, the Ghanaian son. What made him so beautiful, he was not educated in Harvard. He was not educated in Oxford. He was not educated in Berlin. He was the son of the soil of Ghana, educated in Ghana, grew up as a Ghanaian. That man loved Ghana, you know, with all of his heart. And even when Ghana broke his heart, he never stopped loving Ghana. And yes, you broke his heart. I can tell you that. But he never stopped loving his Ghana.
How did we break his heart?
No, some things leave those wounds closed. Those who know what I'm saying know what I'm saying.
Okay.
I love all of our leaders. I love our president. Mm-hmm. I even love his opposition. I'm not going to tell you who I'm rooting for, but I love the old man. I had a beer with him when he wasn't president yet, and I really love him. Ghana has to move forward.
Okay.
And we have so many beautiful examples to learn from. Right. Rawlings is not the only example, but he's a good one, and we should study him, you know.
Okay.
And so we had other presidents who did some good things too. We need to study him. We need to know the history of our nation, not just a few occasions of something we think bad happened. Let's know the history and know why the bad things happen. So it can never happen again to us.
All right. Okay. So I come back to Prof. But, Mr. Femi, what differences do you see between the Africans who have been born on the continent in terms of their mind and those who were never born here, who were born outside the continent? The colonized mind, you say, and if there is anything like that, the enslaved mind.
Okay. Let me just start this time to take us a little bit to the base. That we as people of the modern African heritage are the base of everything on the planet. That out of our knowledge are other people existing from. It's just a continuation. I would like to pose this to the youth, that how many of them are aware that the airplane that they are flying was a concept of the African. It was designed by Africans. It was the material change that allowed the European at the modern time, who studied from us, for them to take it on. How many of them know what the airplane was made out of, or the knowledge that went into it? I will explain briefly. Most people think that the airplane is a bird. No, it is not. Our ancestors studied the dolphin fish. I repeat, go into your aquarium and look at a dolphin fish and look at an airplane. And look at how the airplane, when it turns, the wings and the tail of the airplane. And then that our ancestors, when they designed it, made a wood carving of it, of exactly airplane we're using today. This is over 5,000 years ago, before the airplane came into existence. And that if you want to look at it, one of them is the Museum of Cairo in Egypt, another one in Britain, UK. Okay? And they didn't even stop there. They left other messages that at the same bottom, so is up. As is in the lower, so up is in the high. This is the concept that the European took and developed the airplane, and we're worshiping them, default of our own classical knowledge. You take away from there. If not because of us, the rest of the global body will be living in ignorance. It was Africans who came up with the writing concepts. The pen, the paper, and the ink came from us. The U.S. current constitution is written on hemp paper from us.
And I'm showing you the paper, the papyrus, where even the word paper came from. And the two documents that you're watching, one is the Ryan Mathematic Papyrus, 2,000 years older than Pythagoras, but it has what they call the Pythagorean theorem in there. And this is Africans. The two bottom one are two of the oldest medical papyrus in the world. We had medical books in Africa on surgery, on the heart, on the brain, and they were using our medical books in Europe. The Arabs took it to them and translated in Arab until the 1800s. Yes, from us. Mali, biggest trade with Europe in the 13th century was books. We were selling them books because books was a novelty to them. So, and there's so much more that.
Prof, so why do we still have in our books? I did engineering from coming from my university. In our books, we still have the Europeans as the theories.
Yes, because we're using their colonial format to educate our children. Burn those books, throw that in the garbage. We have enough books written by our own people. Even our great J.B. Dankwa. How many of our children still read J.B. Dankwa? Explain culture and spirituality to us. Mm-hmm. We cry about him and we talk about him when we talk about the politics of Nkrumah. But let's talk about his spiritual and cultural and political writings and take advantage of what he left for us. You know. Okay. I'll show our people something else to see if they can see this one. Let me see how close I can get it. That's the two popes Francis and the one he relieved, praying to the Black Madonna in the basement of the Vatican while they got you playing to a white Madonna. Wake up, African people. Wake up. Just little things we need to know. Let me give you one other thing else, because, you know, I hit him real hard last time on the Christian thing, and I saw his poor little heart was palpitating. This is a picture. This picture is in the Coptic Museum in Egypt. It's one of the oldest rendition of Christ in the world as an African with his disciples. That ain't a Black American Black History Month project. This is the oldest painting of Christ known in the world. And he's a Black man with an afro with his Black disciples. And then the other picture is Christ kissing his mother-in-law, kissing Mary's mom. Let me get that one for you. Oh, that should be down. Yes, he's kissing the mother of Mary. And Mary's mama is Black, and the Christ that's kissing her is Black. So there's so much we need to learn about history if we are to free our minds. The white man has wrapped a false, counterfeit white chain around our minds. And one beautiful thing about Jerry Rawlings, he had unshackled the chain. He broke the lock and he pulled that chain off of his mind. And he looked strange to other people because he had freed his mind. The very word freedom is two Greek acronyms. Free means to liberate. Dome means mind. Freedom don't mean having the right to vote. It means to liberate your mind. And then you can build a society of free men and women.
So until the mind is liberated, we cannot build it.
We're in trouble. Absolutely.
Impossible.
Okay.
By the way, if our listener audience still want to educate themselves about some of this stuff that Professor Small have mentioned, you may want to look at a book called Stolen Legacy. Stolen Legacy. I think by Borge. I'm not 100% sure of the
Stolen Legacy.
name of that. Was
Stolen Legacy, George G.M. James. Stolen
Legacy
by George G.M. James.
Okay,
now,
George
if we are going to make the effort to get ourselves back, I have mentioned the airplane science that came from us that we did not know. I've mentioned that numbers came from us. The first mathematicians were among us. The first health practitioners are our people. It was when Europeans now got back to us that they started to figure out how do they take what belongs to us and how do they make it to be theirs. When you look at the Bible, for example, I don't want to get too much into religion this time, but you want to realize that all the base of the writing came from the Africans. Europeans just put their history on top of our knowledge. Do you see anywhere in the Bible they mention or America?
Nope.
I see that they were what to us without questioning it. Anywhere you go now, you see the Africans. Go ahead, Professor Small, go ahead.
That's Brother Samson. He invented the cell phone. See that black man?
Yeah.
He's the black man that invented the cell phone. That's the first black woman astronaut to go in outer space. And then, you know, everybody today is getting their cataract treatment. This is the black woman that invented what they call the FICA, this new method of getting rid of cataracts that doesn't leave you with any scars. But do they tell you that this is an African woman that did this? The very internet that we're on was created by an African man. I think he's from Nigeria. Let me see if I got his name. But they don't tell us about him. Yet there would be no internet without this continental African. There would be no, what's the other thing? Email without this black man from southern India. You see, when we learn these truths, the mystery will go away. The mystery will go away. And our mind will move towards freedom.
You said, or you have said, both of you, you have said that the mind of the African is in trouble. It's obvious.
Well, Stephen Biko, as he was telling our brother from South Africa, he said the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So I think, Femi, you had said the last time, then the greatest weapon in the hand of the oppressor, of the oppressed, is the mind of the oppressed. I think you said that the last time we were on. So this is about learning the history. You know, when the British came into Ghana, they didn't have a fight with the Dutch or the Portuguese. They fought with us. Yah Santiago wasn't fighting ghosts in Ashanti. She was fighting the Brits. And they were killing us to take our land. They wanted to steal our golden stool. Some little piece of trash came to Kumasi and said, give me your golden stool. Some trash who had nothing back in England. How dare he ask for the spiritual soul of a nation to be given to a piece of garbage? And so Yah Santiwa, she rose up and she pulled an army together and she took on the mighty force of the Britons. Don't just look and we talk about Yah Santiwa like she just had a little fun in the sun. No, she was a general, a revolutionary, a guerrilla warrior that led her men into battle and saw many hundreds of them die for the savior of our nation. So let's get serious about our history. You know, we know Bansu came all the way from Ashanti, all the way to Fanti land, and drove the Dutch into the sea, or the Portuguese, whichever one of the criminals were there, took Elmina Castle from them and ran them away from Ghana. Let's tell the story of Bansu. Let's talk about Bansu.
When did that one happen?
This is just before then the British would come back in. So we're in the 1800s. This is one of the Asantehines. And people say, oh, the Asante sold slaves. Well, all Asantes didn't sell slaves. They were the Asantes that helped to crush slavery. So let's tell the truth. Study your history, you know.
Okay. Right. Mr. Femi, you said...
Femi.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You said you talk about economics and trade.
Right. But I want to answer your first question. Then I want to go to the second one. The question that you asked me was the difference between Africans that were born in the continent and Africans who are called the diaspora.
Yes.
Well, we are the same group of people. Suffering the same kind of dilemma. The Africans who are born and raised in the continent under the oppressed system of the European system were forced into exile. And it's a big brain drainage to all the Africans all over the world. People like came to the US over 40 years ago for a 4-year college. 41 years later, I'm still here. Could you imagine how many of us, doctors, lawyers, all the professional skill we could take back home? Now, on the diaspora, on this hemisphere of the equator, I mean the waterline, is that we got here not knowing what we are getting into. All of them here under the survival state. We wanted to be educated. We wanted to get ahead in life. We wanted to be able to support our family. So we came here under desperate pressure. By the time we realized what we are dealing with, half of us have gone through half of our age before we realized that it's a foul game. The difference between the diaspora and the people on the continent, that the diaspora now have the experience of living with the lies of the Europeans.
Lean a little closer.
So well.
Lean a little closer to your mic, Femi. A little closer to your mic.
Closer to him. Or to my microphone, you said?
Yes, your microphone.
Okay. Now, the fact that we are living with them, we're now able to see the lies that has been told for a long time, and we see it in acting day-to-day activity with the people that we are living with. So we have a serious suffer of education that we could take back to the African continent. But there's a double-sided to this. One side of it is that some of us realize that we've been taken, we've been beaten to the ground, we've been canned We've been flipped. We've been bamboozled. The rest of us just want to have the advantage the Europeans have over us when they get back home. In other words, some of us does not want to give our little petty luxury, I call it, or advantage. When we get back home, some of us want to act like the European, want to be on top of the food chain at the expense of the masses. We need to voice up against those people to shove it. That fella said it. This is colonial mentality you're bringing back to the African continent. I'll share some of the books that might be interested, that the youth or anybody interested in the subject might want to look at. One of them is by a brother by name, I have one of his books here, Anthony Broder. The title of that book is African Early Input to Human Civilization. This one is called The Brothers Far. Now, the other one I think I want to share with my audience would be great African thinkers. You have a list of them and their thought process. So if you don't want to read the million books, you could quickly read through this one and see what the African great minds are thinking and how do we process and move forward. And then this one is Note from an African World Revolution. And the author is, can you see?
Dr. John Henrik Clarke.
Okay. When we leave from there, this one is a must read by Neely Fuller. It's well known to be called the Slave Codes. Neely Fuller. I don't know if you could see the author's name. I'm trying to see if I can. Where's
it's Fuller.
Okay.
Neely, Nealefuller, or Neally, Neely Fuller Jr. That book is an extraordinary document.
And there's one more I want to share, that during slavery, the Europeans, yes, they tricked us, but among us were the rotten egg among our rulers. It was impossible for anybody to come from Europe and know the inner corners of the African continent. It was Africans among us who showed them the way, who sold us to them, who get benefit from it. And that we still have those kind of Africans with us today. A book to help to look into some of these subjects will be this one, Slavery and the Birth of an African City, Lagos, Nigeria, 1760 to 1900.
Okay.
This is
I didn't have that one, Femi. I didn't have that one.
I promised that I will send it to you. Do you remember? Now, this is the heavy hitter. This is not for the beginners. Urugu is an African-centered critic of European thoughts and behavior. I have a tendency to mention this book, not because of the voluminous writing of the book, but the concept is that we cannot use the same system that was used to divide us and separate us. We cannot use that system to assemble us. That's what this book is all about. And so it is important that we know that a lot of things that we're using are invented by Black people. If you could get access to this one, Black inventions of the Americans. I mean, the list goes on and on. But having said all of this, all we are saying now is that it's time for us to re-knowledge ourselves, to know who we came from, where we came from, what was taken from us, and where do we go. Professor Smart just showed you the guy who invented the cell phone. I want to add 2 more layers to that. That does the African know that the base of the raw materials of all the cell phone we are carrying around is still from Africa. One of them is called cobalt, C-O-L-B-O-T. That's the battery. It's going to be in all your cars, and they're taking in, most of it is in Congo DRC. The second important material, raw materials in that, is called coltan, C-O-L-T-A-N. Coltan. Most of this is also in Congo. We're getting wrapped, broad daylight. and we are bowing for those people who are stealing from us. When we have issues, we're running to people who to come resolve our issue. Take, for example, anytime we have conflict, we are inviting the Americans in. In the history of the U.S., about 250 years of existence, only maybe 16 years had they been at war with somebody else. How could you be going to a warmonger, the #1 producer of weapons to mankind, to come and solve your African problem? Something is wrong with our brain. That must change. All Africans must get hold of
it. With all the books that you showed us, it means that your earlier statement is that the mind of the African is locked, and you would have to reprogram it. Yeah. Professor, you said that Rawlings was able to do that.
Yeah.
And if you look at the names of the children, if you look at how he treated the wife, you could see that.
Yes.
You could see that.
Let me tell you a secret, Femi, about the slave ships coming from Europe. You know, they call it the triangle. They came from Europe with their goods for the chiefs and the others. Then they went to the Caribbean with the captured Africans and they sold them. And then they took the raw materials from the Caribbean back to Europe to be manufactured and then bring it back down to sell to us. There was a study done by Harvard and Princeton some years ago to see what was on the ships coming from Europe to Africa. You know, they had the kettle and the pots and the things like that. But guess what they found was on the ships? Tobacco soaked in opium. Our chiefs never knew what hit some of them. They just had to have that tobacco. It was like the crack of that day. But they never knew. And it wasn't until this research showed that they were taking tobacco from America to Europe, treating them and soak them in opium, then selling that tobacco in Africa. That's how diabolical this man was then and is now. That's why history erases his mystery and lets you see him for what he is. If Africa is no good, if Africa is the shithole that Trump talk about, if Africa has nothing, why don't they leave us alone? Just go to Europe, enjoy yourself. Go to America, enjoy yourself. Leave us without Africa. Leave us alone.
It's impossible for them, from an economical perspective, to leave us alone. It is impossible.
They will not leave us.
They will be killing
themselves
if they try to. One.
Oh no.
The base of everything they use scientifically came from us. Their material needs is still from us. So it is important for them to flip us over, upside down, and then put themselves on top of us and freeze our history. They've done that successfully. The Europeans live in an ice age when they didn't have no water, no sun, and no earthy material. By the time they left that, they came to us who had just launched. If you want to read about that subject, you may want to look at the book Iceman Inheritance. The Iceman Inheritance. And then you will understand what makes them so hardened that by the time they came to us, we were not ready for the level of their own state of peace because of their survival need.
And the author of that book is Michael Bradley. Michael Bradley is the author of the Iceman Inheritance. And so it's a question of knowing thyself, learning to have self-worth, self-value, self-respect, self-esteem as Africans. I want to know, let me play with the Yoruba, if you don't mind, Femi. I keep calling you Kwame. Maybe you need to move to Ghana.
We're the same people, but go ahead.
You know, but let's look at the Yoruba. So, you know, I study the Yoruba tradition, and in some ways I'm an adept with one of the concepts of the Orishas called Oya. That's my mother, yes? And my mother, Oya, practiced polyandry. For those who don't know, that means she had more than one husband. But in the metaphor, it's a metaphoric story. One of her husbands was Shango, and the other husband was Ogun. And so when you study the metaphor, it's, they call these Orishas, they're calling them gods. There's only one God. The Muslim, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. The Christian says Christ only is God. And okay, that's fine. But the African says, we have other powers. And so Oya is the story about change. It is a metaphorical story using this woman as the symbol, talking about change and process that happens as a result of the desire to change that comes from getting new knowledge about your own weaknesses. So Shango the king, who had been arrogant and egoistic, he caused the life of his own brother in a duel fight to death between his two younger brothers. And he realized how corrupt his mind was. And so he ran away in the forest and he hung himself. But Oya finds him and cuts him down. Obakoso, or the king is not dead.
Obakoso, yep.
Obakoso. So he represents in the metaphor the acceptance of the need for change in character. And so he must marry Oya because she is change in process. But then she marries another man, or was already married to another man, who was Ogun, the god of iron and the god of war. But that's the metaphoric symbol. In order to get iron, you got to take a piece of rock, put it in a fire, burn out the impurities, and what you get is transformation as a result of change. So in the story of Oya, Shango, and Ogun, you're hearing the story of a person or a people or a group that realize the need to change and marries the process of change called Oya, who marries transformation as the result of the change called Shango. So we're talking about social commentary, about metaphorical and philosophical understanding of how to create human consciousness. The same thing is in the Obosun. We think, oh, the Obosun gonna bite us, it's going to eat it. If the Obosun would hurt you, they would have done it already and ran all of you out of Ghana with your cross and your crescent and say, go your way and leave us. Leave Adadi Kofi, leave Tigare, leave us alone to do our dance and do our thing. But it's not that. It is our culture that needs to be studied and to be learned from so that we can transform ourselves.
Okay. What did you, Professor, what did you say about Jerry Rawlings in terms of the processes of reprogramming the mind that you said he liberated? What did you see? What were the things that you saw him?
We once talked about this to some degree, not really in real depth, but he was saying, like, I'm not going to have, I'm not having too much issue with those who want to be Christians, those who be Muslims, as long as they want to be Africans. So he was clear on that being African was something fundamentally different from what other people's theology and philosophy transformed us into. He had a sense of being African. Yes, despite all of the harshness of being a military man, being a president, being someone who had taken control of a government, and having to carry out government, he had a compassion. Me and my group, we would stop by his house and they would greet us there at his house in Accra. And we would bring backpacks full of school supplies because he had a foundation that he was doing that was taking care of the schools in some of the villages. And so we supported that foundation. He would take a picture with every single one of the 35 to 40 people in that group. No problem. Then he would march us outside and say, oh, okay, Prof, now we want a group picture. I should have brought some of those pictures today. He understood when he came to Black America, he told us, he says, we want you to come home, but we don't want you to bring the oppressing situation you're in Black America home. Don't come home if you can't contribute anything, because you're better off here. We don't need you to come and be in poverty over there on our hands when you can solve it better here. But those of you who've got skills, who can come and help us build, Ghana welcomes you to come back home. And many of us came. Thousands of us came, actually, before the year of return, you see. And he wasn't trying to placate us. He didn't think we had something the Ghanaians didn't have, because we don't. We're the same people stuck in different locations, struggling for the same thing, freedom. And he thought that if he can unite some of the skills and technology that we had, that the American won't let us use for our own benefits, come home with it and use it for the benefit of Ghana and the benefit of yourself and your families and the benefit of the greater nation.
Would you say that generally in Africa, if I'm a Christian, I put my Christianity before my Africanness? If I'm a Muslim, I put my Islam practice.
Yeah. Yes, most people.
Do you see that as common?
Most Africans at home and abroad do that, and that has been our destruction.
Okay.
Christianity is birth in Africa. Islam is birth in Africa. But the forms we're getting having nothing to do with what our ancestors created. The Arab Turkish Islam is not the Islam of Prophet Muhammad wasallam. This is the Islam of some Turks, some Kurds, and some Arab marauders and raiders. And they have legitimized with the hadith, which would be a disrespect to our Prophet wasallam. The same thing with the life of the man we call Jesus the Christ. As early as we go back in time, the Africans painted him as an African. Okay? Painted his wife as black. You mean his mother, as his mother-in-law is black, his mama, grandmother as black. And here we are worshiping some white man out of Europe and calling it our savior. That's ludicrous. And then we put that above, even though the Bible says, honor thy mother and thy father, that your day may be long upon the land, we are honoring the mother and fathers who are the murderers of our people. And we are not paying any respect to those who love us, who was murdered. That's an insult to the integrity of our ancestors. How could you have any blessings if your ancestors do not bless you?
Do not bless you. Wow.
Everybody in the Bible is dead, by the way. Okay? They're all somebody's ancestors. They're all dead. Huh?
Yes.
There's somebody else's ancestors. What about your ancestors?
Yeah. Anyway.
The
So,
concept of God.
Okay,
The concept of God, or the concept that something above us is ruling us, came from the Africans.
Yeah.
And it's amazing now that the people who started this are lost, because there's one fundamental flaw thinking in the African continent. That's the fact that we are confusing religion versus spirituality, two different things entirely. A religious system is a way of you getting to your spirit. Your spirituality is a process between you and the whole of the cosmos.
Our spirits have been colonized by the enemy. Our souls have been colonized by the enemy with his religion.
Okay. Now, a religious system is a system to limit your thinking deliberately. When the Christian faith was used for the modern day system we're using, it wasn't created for spirituality. It was created for a control mechanism. The guy who started it wanted to have what is known now as a unified behavior system. Why? It was after a war, and each of the versions still have their weaponry system to fight, and they are worshiping different systems. So what he's looking for is the intelligence of how do we get these people to do the same thing at the same time, so that a small group of them cannot package themselves, organize themselves to go back to war. Then he came up with what is called a unified behavior system. It must also be important for African, with our high level of intelligence from our ancestors to us, to ask this question, when we knew without doubt the base of everything is a male-female gender. Everything on the planet is dual. Everything. Everything on the planet have an A and a B side to it. Then the question we should be asking under this European doctrine system is, you have a spiritual system, the form of the woman. They take the female out of the spiritual system. How come none of the angels are women? If you really want to go back to a very entered African thinking, our women are more spiritual than the male. They have more access to the infinite than us. And then we are following people with thought to teach us what they did.
Now, if you come to Africa, if you come to Nigeria, Ghana, everywhere, religion, churches are springing, or they have sprung, up everywhere. That is a fact. And a lot of the things that you said, they use the religion to encave us, to enslave our mind. Now, this one is being done by our own people, where the teachings.
We have become white people in blackface. So that's a black face, but that's a white mind that's doing that to you. That's embedded in that black face. And what we're saying is that knowledge of self would kill that white mind and give birth to the black mind.
Okay, Professor, the most difficult people to convince to even pick a book, because some of us, the big churches, they even teach the youth that don't read any other book apart from the leader of this church's book. Don't listen to anybody. Yes. These are things that are going on apart from the preaching from this man. Now, a lot of our people, some of them even have all these degrees, PhD. If they have to read a book, it has to be sanctioned by these leaders. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I call them intellectual prostitutes. Intellectual prostitutes. They've cajoled a European system so that they help bamboozle their own people to corner them so they can give them tithes or tithes. In Africa, in Nigeria, all our industrial hubs or warehouses have been turned to churches, and then the people are hungry.
Yes.
So it is important to us to go back to understand that the African system is still the system we're using. Most of you are using a computer today. Do not know where the binoculars of that computer come from. If you go and study the Ifa from the Yoruba kingdom, you will see the biometric code of the computer came from us century before the computer ever came to assistance to our number system in how the Ifa divination is used. And now, then we're using the computer also, not knowing that it was a Nigerian by name Uwegeli that put together, I think, 250 computers for a processing system where then the computer could process a lot of information.
So somebody is saying we need to build a better system, because the reality is that this information that you're sharing with us, how do we get them to the youth? Because a lot of them have been captured right from the secondary school, right from the primary school, with these religions that are not teaching values, that are not teaching truth, that are not teaching the ability to use the mind, that are not teaching anything that they can do to transform our societies. The teachings, the most dangerous thing in Africa now is not politics, it's the religion. The religion will not vanish. Where they have captured, I mean, I grew up in that. They capture your mind so that you cannot question anything.
Yeah.
You have engineering, but you cannot question. Even if you're practicing as an engineer or as a business person, they tell you that go and do the work of God, which means stop whatever you're doing, become a pastor. They have turned a lot of our lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers into this. The few that we have, now most of them have abandoned the practice, and now there are churches everywhere.
Well, so we come back to Jerry's fundamental question, and I think I'm going to read his notes, where he's saying a government has an obligation, the moral responsibility to be seen to be fighting against corruption all the time. And that corruption that has been that we've adopted in our neo-colonial systems is what producing what you are seeing. If you would turn right there, you have the Adinkra symbols on your wall.
Yes, you see it.
But how many people know how to read the Adinkra symbols? They're full of our history. They're full of our folklore. They're full of our ancient commentaries. They're full of our science, but we see them as pretty choreographic things, and we don't know what they mean anymore. You know? And there's a good book, a 3-volume book out on it. I don't know whether I shared it with you before, by Ngora Bura, a professor out of Ivory Coast.
Okay.
Do you have yours with you, Femi?
You mentioned
it's not here. It's not here.
Yeah.
Here.
I think mine is, Lord, I keep moving my book. Oh, I see them. I see them. You see where the book. This book, you know, and that's one. Let me get the other one. They're big books. These are written by an African, a professor from Cote d'Ivoire.
Okay.
And it's all about the Adinkra symbols and the gold weight symbols. And it's called the Akan World of Gold Weights. And there's all the Adinkras in there, all the gold in there. And you can see his name. Where's Dr. Boer's name? Yes. Nyangoran Bua. And this book is important. You probably have to go to Cote d'Ivoire to get it. The Akan World of Gold Weights. And our history. He goes all the way back to Egypt and show the Akans coming from Egypt in different streams through time. Listen, our history will destroy the white man mystery like a nuclear bomb if we use it. And it will allow us to plan our economic and political current realities based on the truth of history. And that's why you come back again to a Jerry Rawlings. Let's look at him as a young man back in 1979 and 81. They were 30-something years old. And they wanted to change not just Ghana, the entire continent of Africa. They wanted to overthrow every government and drive the white people out of Africa. They weren't successful, but thank God they had the dream. So we can fulfill that dream one day of a free Africa.
Do you think that was the right decision? Military?
Yeah, it was the only decision. Because they weren't just up against the members of government in Ghana. They were up against British intelligence, French intelligence, American intelligence. The French have more troops based in Africa than they have in France. Right now with AFRICOM, America's about to have more troops based in Africa than any place else. And they can walk around in their civilian clothes and dance with your women and party if you want. But you got the devil sitting at your dinner table and sleeping.
So do we have a chance? If we have all these, do we have a chance?
Yes. Something else. Okay. I love my brother. Let me tell you, we're here to talk about Jerry, Mr. President, and I like to quote him. And he says, "Let me assure you that Africa can work. It is up to the rest of the world to look beyond the prejudice and sensational images and recognize Africa as the continent of the future." That was your president that made that statement. He believed in Africa, and he believed Africa could work. And he pronounced 20-something years ago more that Africa was the continent of the future and the world had to see it. So listen to his words, you'll hear his thinking. Let's not just dwell on the mistakes. Yes, they made some mistakes and they're painful, but we got nearly 1 billion people to save. We got 50 nations that must be turned into a single nation at some point at whatever federated construction we come up with. We can't survive this way, where we're in the richest country in the world and our people are walking around in the street hungry. Our women can't get good prenatal care for the babies no more? No. And let me tell you something. If we don't get it right, God will never let us be free. See, that woman that birthed the three of us, we all came out of the womb of a woman. She wasn't a thing. She wasn't a whore. She wasn't an object to be misused. She was that aspect of God that creates. That's the only way God created human, is through the womb of that woman. And so she's that aspect of God that creates. So do you know what you're playing with? That's African philosophy. The European philosophy said God's up here and you down here. No, God is every and all things at once, according to African understanding of cosmology and ecology and reality.
Okay. So, Mr. Femi, I get to you. You look at Africa, you look at the young men, you look at the young women. What you are doing to us today is you are repairing that mind that you said you've been caged. What do you say to many young men who feel so much frustrated? Because for you to be so confident and positive about Africa, the materials that you showed us, if you don't have access to them and if you have not read them, it will be very difficult for you to be that positive about Africa.
That's very true. I think what I try to do on my end is to forgive some of us who are out of ignorance. Most expensive thing on the planet. Because once you do not have a knowledge of who you are, you will lose your level of consciousness. Once you lose your consciousness, you lose your possibilities. Once you lose your possibilities, you are somebody else's lunch. To get back to some of the stuff Professor Small have talked about, we have that the first railroad system, train system, came from us. It was us who dragged a rail system and put horse in it to drag before the German produced the first automotive system in the world and started to use it today. So also while we are at it, it is highly important that we let all the rest of us know that the nuclear technology we're using today, the mathematical equation of it, the knowledge of it did not come from the US. It came from the Africans. The reason the Africans didn't use it was the consequence of it. While we're also at it, it is important to let the African understand the reason we didn't use it. We realized the use that is an explosive technology. The African use implosive technology. Implosive. That means everything we produce, we want it to be in harmony with nature, and we didn't want to destroy the environment where we're living in. The European on the other side are using explosive technology. The car is an explosive technology. The airplane is explosive technology. The nuclear bomb is an explosive technology. And you could go on that the list. The electricity system we're using is an explosive technology. They must burn something to get something. They must burn us to get something out of us. Now, the part of it that I want us to kind of pay attention to, where did that psyche came from? The Europeans are the only group on the planet Earth who know that they are minority. The land they came from did not have anything in it. And so also they are the only group of people on the planet with a recessive production system. In other words, if there are 10 Europeans on the planet today, 10 years down the line, they will not have 10. The psyche from the Ice Age have limited them to a limited number of children. So also the state of their cell, the African cell is a higher cell than any other cell. If they meet us or they lose the European system. If they mingle with a black person, they end up with a brown color. They can never reproduce that color again. Out of the black colors, other colors came from. You cannot come white cannot make black in the color system. It is of black color that you could mingle it, maneuver it to other colors. They understood this. This is the highest of their own human insecurity. And that's why when they come to other people, they constantly looking for an advantage, take them over.
And we've got two great examples, President Obama and Vice President Harris.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to see that process having manifest itself, you know. But in the beginning, when God first manifested as a human, it was an African woman. When God first became human, it was an African woman, not somebody named Adam, which simply means earth, by the way. They weren't talking in Hebrew about a man. Adam means earth. Look it up in the Hebrew. I've studied it. So when God first manifests as a human being, it was an African woman. And it was that woman and God that gave birth to the next generation. So if we know our culture, we won't be lost in their foolishness. Our culture is validated by science at every level, because we invented science as a concept of study. It's the study of cosmology and ecology. And we've got books going back 30,000 years in Africa to prove it. Not 30 years, 30,000, 40,000 years.
But Europeans have come out as if they own science and technology.
Oh, yeah. Well, a liar and a thief must always lie and steal, and the lion covers your stealing. But if we know ourselves well, then we know our enemies well. But if you don't know yourself, you can't possibly know your enemy.
So would you trust any African leader who is not a student of a lot of things that you have taught here?
No, I would not trust a single African leader that's not a student of African history. I trust President Rawlings. I trust our current president in Ghana because I know him. He's a well-studied man. Don't take none lightly. I didn't know Muhammad as well. I trusted Mugabe. I trusted Inyomo in Namibia. I trusted Samori Michel in Mozambique. I trusted Winnie Mandela. I didn't have the same trust for Nelson, even though I had respect for Nelson.
Why?
Because Nelson was in prison for most of the years of the revolution in South Africa, and Winnie was leading that revolution. So which are you going to trust? The one who was in prison, isolated from the revolution for 28 years, or the person who led the revolution for 28 years?
We're dealing with coconuts.
Okay.
That means we're dealing with coconuts. A coconut have a white inside, but the outside brown.
Mm-hmm.
A coconut have a white inside, but the outside is black. And so also it is important that we're talking about like Ama or the Camilla of our life. Their social environmental upbringing was not African-centered. They've managed to operate out of the oppressive system that they live in to maneuver themselves to the top. You don't do that being a very nice person. It is not a substance-based merit system. It's a eat-what system. And so also when we do not train them, do not give them an African-centered thinking, and then they figure themselves to get to the top, we're expecting something that is not in there. You cannot plant a mango tree and expect to harvest orange. Nature does not allow that. So we have to now make sure that we're the one educating what we put forward to help us. If they're individual head of state try to centralize themselves as an African, the Western institutional system that is over 100 years old will come in and wipe them off. And it's very easy because most of the Black Africans are in a state of desperation. for materialist state, for luxurious state, and for recognition. And when you have a lot of those people looking for recognition and acceptance, it is easy, very easy, for the institution of the white Europeans or the Asian system to find one of us to sell us out. We're still, because we don't have institutions that are strong enough to help do our
so
for us.
Wow. So, Prof, you said you trust the current president in terms of the knowledge on Africa. What are some of the policies that you think show that he has this consciousness? And the same thing with Jerry Rawlings as well. Some of the policies, especially education in school. What is it they are doing?
The education, the work to advance the medical facilities in Ghana, the establishment of, you remember the day when he's in the gutter picking up the plastic bags and the trash, and every year in Ghana now, and I'm there many times and able to do it in Cape Coast where we have a hotel, we have the cleanup, and we go into all the ditches and we cut the grass and we pick up the junk and we bag them up. That may appear to be a little thing, but when a community becomes conscious of their responsibility to the community and environment they live in terms of pollution, and then you set up a phenomenon where the whole nation does it every year, that's a very big contributor. But what he was trying to do with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, who was putting a lot of pressure on him, he was trying to minimize their influence on the political policies of the nation. And, you know, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund is two gangster organizations. It is two arms of colonialism. When the Germans destroyed their military, they came up with these two economic instruments to hold us in check the same way the military did before the Second World War. And so if we look at just the fight he had with those two organizations to try to get Ghana's money, to get the CD solvent, and he did pretty good for a long time, you know. The financial piece, the hospital systems, the education, and the fact that he brought the multi-party system back, and by stepping down at the end of his term showed it works.
Okay. You have any idea how he handled local businesses, entrepreneurship? I'm talking of Jerry Rawlings.
Say that again.
What's your assessing? How do you assess how President Rawlings handled the promotion of local businesses?
Well, you know, there was a very big crisis in that whole period in the 90s, early 90s, where they were trying to lower the prices, you know, for the local business to make costs for them lower. And then they found there was a contradiction that was putting a lot of pressure on the farmers who needed to raise their prices of goods they were selling to the marketplace. I don't know all of the details, but I remember that they did a pretty decent job in working out that balance between the merchants in the cities and the farmers in terms of getting a pricing balance between the two. And I think that might be one of their great achievements. You know, the big Makola markets, you know, when it was torn down, a lot of people was upset. But he was trying to create another kind of urban market environment that would be more contemporary. And I think to a great degree, they succeeded in that. And the pricing of the farm goods and the pricing that was being paid for in the marketplace, that was the big sticker, but they worked that out relatively well. I don't think it was solved by the time he left office, but I think he made a big contribution to that.
Okay. Femi, Akinbi, which African president do you see promote industrialization, manufacturing, processing, and which are being led not by Chinese or by Europeans, but by Africans.
That's far-fetched. That's a little bit far-fetched from where I'm sitting.
Okay.
I think some of them have some of it, but none of them is what I call totalistic African. Neither they know it or they're afraid to implement it. I'll give you an example.
Why are they afraid?
There's a guy from, I couldn't hear you, there's a guy from Trinidad and Tobago. I forgot his first and last name. He wrote a lot of books. But then when he turned to become the prime minister of the country, he banned his own book. Literally.
Eric Williams. Eric Williams.
Thank you, Eric Williams. Yeah. Because he's afraid that if he steps on the plate with his revolutionary idea, he might get wiped out, or he will not get the support of the global institutional system that was never set for us, meant for us, was meant to control us. I guess my issue when we have this kind of conversation should be we should use a third of our conversation in visiting our past and two-thirds to the solution of the future. Mm-hmm. For example, as we're speaking now, the question we should be asking so small and his before they go join us. How do we educate the whole of the African continent? What could we do to make sure that we all awaken mentally, so that we do not need to have this kind of video again and again, so that when we are well equipped with the information needed, they don't need to call him, then they can make a sound decision from their own mental state. I'll give you a few examples coming from my end.
Okay, how do we
Okay, I'll let Professor Small go first. He's the elder, then I'll come behind him.
Okay.
Every household should set aside at minimum 2 hours a week to read a book on African history or to watch a video on African history. I would like to see 3 to 4 hours, but if we would do a minimum of 2 hours in every household, within 1 month, you will change the attitude of the entire village. If every church want to be relevant before the young people turn against them and leave them in their buildings alone, those buildings could be used to teach African histories on the days of the week when you're not doing worship service. Those churches can begin to put money into building strip malls, small mini malls, to employ the people that attend their church. You understand? We should not be in Africa, and I go to Osu, and one of the biggest restaurants there is some Chinese restaurant with a big dragon over it. Where is my cuisine? Where's my African cuisine centerpiece that everybody come to Ghana? Didn't come to Ghana to go get Chinese food or to go to Kentucky Fried on the way from Takoradi, but let me come to Ghana to eat my fufu, to eat my fish stew, to eat my red bread or whatever we want to serve. Let's get innovative with our cuisines. Let's open businesses that reflect our culture, especially our food culture, our clothes culture, our culture that expresses us into the world. And the churches can take a lead in this. Instead of having someone with a stand with a bunch of European used dresses, why not open a factory where African women that go to your church is making a living, making African fashion the fashion? Okay?
Do you think the church leaders have this consciousness?
It can happen if people demand it. If people say, I'm tired of my belly being hungry. If people say, I'm tired of my children ending up in the street selling goods they just bought leased from the Chinese warehouse just to bring enough money home for dinner today, that we want better. Okay? We want better.
Yes. One of the things that I saw with the wife of President Rawlings, Nana Kunadu, is she was always, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, she was always wearing the African way.
I've never seen her without traditional African clothing.
Always.
Testament.
You see a lot of our women, highly educated, dressing, and you can give a lot of credit to her, at least growing up.
We need to rebrand our cultural identity. Rebrand our cultural identity. You know my daughter. You don't know she's my daughter. You know, she's my adopted daughter, and all respects my true daughter. She's in Parliament, and everybody thinks of my baby as a fashionista.
Okay.
But you never see Barbara Asha AC without tradition. Okay. Because, and she and her mom own 2 African clothing shops in Cape Coast that we used to go and shop at when I first came. All of my African clothing I got from them. And so she makes it a point to move in tradition. Any pictures she's sent me from around the world she's traveled as a member of Parliament, she's displaying full African culture dress.
Fantastic.
And Nana was the same. Nana Kamadu was the same.
Yeah.
So your culture is what protects you from mental genocide. Your culture is what you sell to the rest of the world. And you sell that to yourself. That's the foundation wealth in your economy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to take a new look at these things. And so the studying in the household, we can call them study groups. The study groups should be formed in the church. And let the brothers in Ghana who got angry with me sometime, I am a man that send you the sign of fidelity. You know what I mean. I stand on the square like many of you. Okay, I walk towards the east like many of you. So I am one of you. So you know who I am. I'm the son of Solomon. So let's look and see. When we call ourselves Freemasons, let's indeed be free.
Right. Okay, so we get to you. Your answer, please.
Now, I thank my Professor Small again to kind of give us a cultural base to some of these needs. The next thing we need to go to is the futuristic state. What do we do futuristically? One of the biggest gifts that we have that we're not using, we're not using them effectively yet, is the digital space. I used to go to a lot of the conferences at the World Bank, and people used to think I'm crazy when I go to the microphone. I used to tell everybody every year I go that the digital age was a gift, not to the European, but a gift to the African continent and to our people. Why? With this, we could quickly assemble ourselves. With this, we could start our own cryptocurrency and take away the chain of the global economical monetary system that have been pimping us for over 60 years. With this, we could use a system of algorithm in the political system. With this, we could use a digital ID system with its plus and minuses. With this, we could use a digital voting system so our vote will be rigged again. I mean, I can go on. With this, we could start to use a logistics system that have data mapping. Take, for example, 70 to 80% of the fruits and vegetables in the African continent go to waste. We could now then identify that there's a village in Ghana where this woman is producing 1 pound of anything she's produced, and then be able to create a logistic to get it to a White House before it goes to waste. If you harvest cassava, within 48 hours, if you don't refrigerate it or process it, it's gone. Then, with a data mapping system, we could map this woman, give her whatever X name we want to give it for protection. But then we could realize that next year, she's going to be producing between 1 pound to 2 pounds of cassava. And with this data mapping system, able to develop a logistical system to get it from her immediately to the market. those are some of the things we could do from the digital space. I can go on, and actually, I think.
What about the cryptocurrency concept, Femi? The cryptocurrency.
Yes. So also, I mentioned that already, that a cryptocurrency for the African globally. We have 250 million of us in India called the untouchable. We have about between 60 to 80 million of us in Brazil. We're in India. At any point, at will, we could disburse the whole of the global currency system, because it's not working for us. It was not set up for us. It's not maintained by us. When they put the World Bank and the IMF together, there was not a single African person on the table. By the way, there was not a single woman either. It was set up for them, by them only, and they put a gag order that the World Bank and the IMF should be directed by European or American. And that's what we're living with. If we have the one day.
So that is a law. Is that a law? That is a law. It should be led by European or American. Is that a law?
It's an unwritten
in the
law.
Bylaws. Yes.
Oh, it's in the bylaws. Mm-hmm.
That it must only be ruled by American or European. The Chinese have started to ask questions now because they have money into the system. I'm just going to say this much, that if we are not a part of it, if we cannot sit on the table, our vote at the United Nations means nothing, because we have what is called the higher rank of the system there. I'm sure some you know what I'm talking about. So then why are we sitting in there for? Control of what we have now that we can use. We could start our own crypto, and all of us could just be using it by ourselves. That will get rid of the evaluation of our money, the currency exchange rate of 1 to 470, the currency of your country when they don't like you, they reduce your value. Look at Zimbabwe with the currency system. I could go on, and I think really each or all the African countries should have a digital conference consistently on how to integrate our system to a digital space. That's a must for us. The other things I could mention a little bit, in my opinion, is that our youth and the elders, the way they access information are different. Our generation access information different from the youth. The youth are not taken by your intellect anymore. They want the youth to show them material substance and how they can get it, because they're lacking it. So what we must now figure is a way to do is to put them into consciousness by asking the musical stars among us, people in the music industry, not just to sing about the butt and the breast and the Versace and the Rolls Royce, none of which we don't produce in the African continent, and they advertise in other people's culture about our culture, and they get paid for it by us. We should now ask them through a system of neither people like me and the rest of us going to their association conference and speak to them that they should sing about their daily existence, of their people daily existence, the challenges that they have in, when there's no railroad from Cape to Cairo, where there's no emergency ambulance in every corner. Why is it that they cannot get help for their people? They should marinate that into their rhythm, into their conversation, into their music, so that then the youth then pick it that way. That's another form of education. So also in the Western Hemisphere, we use the stars, quote unquote stars, basketball player, tennis player, musician, actors, actress, and call them what I call stars for Africa. That means people at the beginning who are among the stars with consciousness about the continent, to neither talk about it, sing about it, and most importantly, travel there with a group of people and make sure it's publicized, so that once the mass of the African American population with the highest disposable income among the black race on the planet right now sees that, then they're trying to emulate it. It's like us buying a $500 Canyon shoe called Easy. If you wear an African gown to the African continent.
Fantastic.
Where
Let me
African outfit.
Let me ask you.
People then we have
this question. Huh? Okay, fantastic submission. Let me ask Professor this question. Professor, do you think that a lot of Africans in the diaspora, the musicians, the movie actors, the sports people, do you think they really show interest in terms of productivity and trade and commerce and business that can help Africa to grow and develop? Do you think they show interest in this?
They're beginning to get there, and like Femi said, we have to help to organize that. Mm-hmm. There's a movie out now by Samuel L. Jackson called Enslaved.
Okay.
This was his project to dramatize, and he did a lot of it in Ghana. Coming out soon on the Epic Channel, I think. When Wesley Snipes was accosted by this government for tax, he was working in Malawi. Will Smith has traveled all over Africa. Stevie Wonder just said he will be moving to Ghana for the rest of his life a week ago. The many of the basketball players that I work with who are friends with, they're beginning to discover Africa. What's the young boy out of Atlanta? His manager calls me last week. Him and his wife is getting ready to go to Ghana next week. They came for 1 week in the summer and stayed for a month.
Wow.
And so more of these young people are beginning to get there. But as Femi was saying, we need to escalate that kind of organization among them. When the crisis came, right, and bring them in a united front. When the crisis came in Nigeria with the youth, Jay-Z and Beyonce was on it like this, supporting them financially and otherwise, and spoke out on their behalf. So we're seeing more of it, but Femi is right. How do we get them to come as an organized unit?
Okay.
It is the wealthiest sector of Black America, the music and the sports industry. Last 7 years, we've spent over $1 trillion a year in disposable capital. What if we can just get a quarter of that 1 trillion invested in Africa?
Africa, yeah.
By the way, at the end of the day, when we are matured enough about this subject matter, what will have to happen then will be that the African American in this hemisphere will go to a political level of sophistication where their retirement funds are invested in Africa. Once that happens, they will know all the presidents. When they make a wrong move, they will correct them because their money is at stake. Until we get there, we're still talking. And so also I think videos that all these artists are producing, they should wear African attire in some of them, African dance in some of them. Whatever it is we're trying to now sell should be a part of this promoting system so that they can air it to the other African American in this hemisphere. And by the way, I don't hate white people. I'll take their money too, and I will come back to Africa and make sure we guide them, protect them, and make sure they become one of us, not the overtakers of us. Okay?
All right. on your crypto submission, on your crypto, you think IMF and the other one, IMF and the World Bank, you think that they will not control the crypto as you submitted it? How do you think
currency allow you a non-governance system from the central system? They look for means and ways for themselves to get in, but they're coming in late. Lately, I think 123 biggest banks in the US are now trying to formulate to get into that space. It's a space that allows you a non-central system. As long as individual faith, we use a flat currency for cross-Allah's sake. To those who does not understand what a flat currency is, it means a currency that is not backed with anything, just a piece of paper. It is the political will of the people to accept it and they're going to protect it that make it valuable. We have enough faith in our own cryptocurrency. And all of us agree to use it. And we start to use it with some level of credibility. It will have stability. And then we don't have to borrow money from World Bank, the IMF, and then it will allow us to change our procurement system, our procurement system, our contracting system. And they will allow us, most importantly, to use what I call the individual, that's the word I'm looking for. We have value. Human equity is the word I'm looking for. Equity. So that people who don't have real cash still have value because they have sweat equity, they have labor, they have hands.
Did you hear when they were talking about 5G and how the religious, especially the churches, took a stand against it, the 5G technology, that they are trying to, there was a talk during the COVID on 5G. Now, a lot of these technologies are going to run effectively in Africa if we get into those rates. There's a block from the religious sector. How do we explain this?
Okay. The 5G technology is a wave of the digital platform coming in. By the way, it's already in, if we like it or not.
Yes.
One of the greatest use of the 5G is the Internet of Things coming. Because if you're going to be able to use 5G, then you are going to what is known as automation systems. When you have an automated system, it cannot have what they call a breakaway from the frequency. In other words, as we're speaking now, sometimes I don't hear you properly. Your voice will break. That means it's a breakage in the frequency. In the 5G technology, that you have wireless car that is you will get into accident. We cannot get communication from the source of the computer system. Okay? If you have a rail system that is running on automated system based on the 5G technology, if there's a breakage in this technology, the train could derail into accident. But also, the 5G has a disadvantage. Then it allows what is called a mapping system. A mapping system now, if the government of a country does not like you or they're looking for you, you can't hide and you can't get out. Because based upon your face mapping, your ID mapping, whatever system they're going to put in place, they could just put it on, and anywhere you show on the planet, the system will pick you because it's got algorithm in it, it's consistent, and it does not have a breakaway in the frequency.
Okay.
I could go on, but if that answers some of your question, we must study it. It's here. That's right. And it's not going anywhere.
Okay, so I thank you very much. We have just about 5 minutes. We have taken enough of your time. As a matter of fact, the information that you have, that's what we need.
Right, and that's why I invited him, because you need to hear that, man.
Yes, we continuously need that, because you see the other data which are not towards productivity and development, especially at the individual level, is so high. Okay, the entertainment, the sports, the consumption, I'm not talking of the business side, the consumption of it is so high. And that's why sometimes our youth make the decisions or take the decisions that they take. That's why a lot of them will not have belief here, because the data is not there. The history that you talk about, the identity, the books that you showed us, if we have them, then we can make quality decision. But if you don't have them, then we obviously will take the other decision that will destroy us.
It's coming. As Femi just said, we can find a lot of those books in the digital space.
Yes.
You can read them online.
Yes.
And all of us know that we have people all over the world. So the access to getting them is not that difficult. Yes. The biggest thing happened today, we told you they exist. Most people don't know those documents exist. And so, but I would like for us, before we close, to really pay tribute to our President John Jerry Rawlings and to Nana Ajiman Rawlings and her children, and let them know that I can speak, and Femi can tell you, I can speak for a large segment of the African American diaspora, and they will honor my having spoke on their behalf. And so I'm speaking on their behalf as the International Vice President for the World Diasporan Union, and the International Vice President for the OAAU. And I have 2 corporations in Ghana. And, you know, we own property in Ghana. And so I speak on all of their behalf to the Rawlings family and give our condolences and our respect and our love to you and your children and grandchildren. We honor the best in the man when we honor any man or woman. And today we honor the best in your husband and in your father and grandfather. So I want that to be made very clear. And I want to thank my brother Femi. I called Femi with 1 hour. And he joined me on this program. Femi, I love you, my brother, you know, and my comrade and my teacher. And your people have heard you around the world bring a truth and an understanding of what's happening to us to them. So I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
On my end, let me just say, because I'm gonna keep my brief at this junction, is that part of the last issue that we raised regarding the digital space, or what is also known as the blockchain platform. I think all African youth should read everything they can get or anything on the blockchain platform, because the application down the line is endless. I'll give you one example. Currently, African countries are suffering from high level of corruption across the board by our elected officials. With a blockchain technology, problem will cease overnight. Why? In the digital space, when money is released, there have to be some purpose. There have to be identity system. There have to be a linkage to where the money is coming from to where it's going to. So if somebody decides to be corrupt, or you just press a single button on algorithm, it will show exactly where the money came from, who signed it off, what time, at what second of the day, what kind of clothes they got on, the temperature of their body before the money went to the next person. So that will stop a lot of the corruption, and it will show a high level of transparency. So also, if somebody gave a contract of $1 million to a person, and they pay them the $1 million before the job is finished, the data mapping system will take a picture via satellite of the funding of the project on day 1. Day 2, why do you pay him finally when he only did the foundation without the roof? Then that person have a clear argument to make in front of us to tell them why this happened. It's self-evident, it's right, and it's there. On the issue of Brother Rawlings, I will, Professor Small, have covered everything I need to say, but I'll say this much to it. The best among us are the servants among us, servant to the African continent.
Thank you. Great submission. Thank you very much. And I want to say that I grew up seeing him on TV. I saw his passion. I will see him in the data. I will see him on the race. People love him, and he had great heart for his people, and it's so true. And you could see him show respect to women. Yes, just as you said, there were other things that nobody liked, and he was a young man, full of energy, and so they could make a lot of those mistakes. But coming down, you could just say that I don't want to continue. Let us transition. And that was a great step, because you could have said that, no, I want to be there until I die. And Ghana will not be where we are now if you are taking that decision. So we respect that. Respect that so much, and his heart. And a lot of the times you will see him in Africa way. And that did a lot in terms of identity on the minds of our people. And we cherish that. And so we lost. He didn't give any sign that he was going. And for me, that is the side that pains a lot of people. So, Professor, thank you very much for having and your heart. What you shared with us the other time So many people were happy.
Good.
So many people were happy. And that's the surgery that you're doing on our minds. Because if you don't know that it exists, then we have no chance. But the moment we get to know that this is there, at least we can exercise our will to make a decision. So I thank you very much, Mr. Femi Akimbu, as well, for giving us all this depth of knowledge. Professor, thank you as well. Thank you. And anytime we will call on you, you have time, you share with us. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Rise, you mighty people. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir. Bye-bye.